Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The Girl on the Train author Paula Hawkins is out with the new murder mystery novel, A Slow Fire Burning. I spoke with her about the keys to writing mystery novels and the experience of seeing her work adapted for the big screen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you and I know what it's about, but just so our listeners know, tell them the basic premise of the book here.
Okay, this is a book about revenge and deceit and murder, unsurprisingly, and three very intriguing women who may or may not be involved. So it opens with a young man's body discovered on a houseboat in the center of London on the Regent's Canal. And a young woman is seen walking away. She has blood on her clothing. It looks like an open and shut case. But of course it isn't. There are all sorts of different connections, family connections, all sorts of past traumas and tragedies coming back to haunt my characters.
Awesome. Well, there's a ton of in addition to sort of the mystery plot, there's a bunch of, interesting themes. Talk about how sort of the book explores the way that society judges us, and particularly women, actually, how society can view them in a certain way.
Well, yeah, so my characters tend to be a little bit difficult. They tend to be outsiders. They are perhaps people who have not quite met society's expectations. And this is, I think, primarily true of the women. So they're not pretty and pleasing and likable and gentle and nurturing, all those things we ask women to be. They're a little bit difficult. They're suffering through various problems. Laura, for example, who's kind of the heart of the book, she had an accident when she was a child, and now she has some behavioral problems. And she's judged often unfairly, often harshly. And so what I'm looking at is what it's like to go through life as a person like that, who doesn't quite fit and doesn't act how we might expect. What does that mean for you if you're a person like that?
Right, for sure. So that's sort of, maybe like a sociological context a little bit, but talk about how, when you're writing a mystery thriller, what happened to this young man who was found murdered. To you, what is it? I asked Mary Higgins Clark about this too, but I'm curious from you, like, what's sort of the key to sneaking up on the audience a little bit, planting those red herrings, faking them out, and dropping the little clues that shows who did it all along, but there's no way we know it until we see the end. But when we look back, we see the breadcrumbs. But what's sort of the key of that approach for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. I think it's a difficult thing to do well, because you want the book to be suspenseful and surprising and frightening, and you want there to be twists and turns. But that kind of thing can feel a bit manufactured if it's just done for the sake of the twist. So for me, then a psychological thriller is actually, it's all about the psychology. It's about what leads people to commit these kind of crimes. But so at the same time, you've got to layer in, as you say, you've got to lay these breadcrumbs. But I think twists have to be earned. They've got to feel deserved and real. And, they've got to come from characterization. You've got to believe that these people would act in certain ways. So I think it's a very fine balancing act between getting the right kind of level of suspense and surprise, but also writing something that doesn't feel kind of melodramatic and extreme.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, it's got to be a fascinating headspace to live in, because obviously when you're writing thrillers like this, murders and mysteries and things, it's got to be, it's definitely dark material. But I mean, when you're coming up with sort of these plots and you're dreaming all this up in your head, obviously it's fictional on the page, but are you walking around London and being like, oh, that's a place to hide a dead body. That's a place, like, do you catch yourself being a little bit, you take yourself aback, like, well, that was a little morbid, but that's good for the book.
I do seem to have quite a morbid sensibility, because that is something I do all the time. I'm constantly, well, not all the time, but often when I'm out and about, I will notice a place and think, oh yes, you could hide a body in there, or oh, you could just like push somebody over the edge there and no one would ever know. So I'm on the lookout for good places to sort of do away with people, which I think is actually really difficult these days, because it's much harder than it used to be in the age of closed circuit television cameras and mobile phones and everything. It is much more difficult to get away with murder, which is obviously a good thing in general, but quite a tough thing for crime writers.
Oh, Jack the Ripper would have never survived with all this technology and social media. Are you kidding me? Well, whenever I have someone so of your esteem on, I'm always curious how you got into it to begin with. So obviously you were born. I guess you were born in what, Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. How did you get into reading? Did you read these sort of crime thrillers growing up? Or were you like obsessed at the library with some of the Agatha Christie's or Mary Higgins Clark, or did you watch Hitchcock movies? I want to know what sort of
Yeah.
was your touchstones.
Well, definitely there was a lot of Agatha Christie when I was much younger. So when I was like 12, 13, I think my parents had a bunch of them in the house. And yes, I used to go to the library and get those out. As a teenager, I watched a lot of horror movies, which actually I didn't enjoy particularly, but my best friend was very into horror. So there was a lot of Halloween and Friday the 13th and those kind of awful things that had that real sort of fetishization of women's fear, and I think a lot of those stayed with me. And then when I was in my 20s, I was really interested in books like Donna Tartt, The Secret History, which was the very complex, psychologically driven, those really beautifully drawn characters, but still with a murder mystery, with a murder at the heart of the story. So yeah, I kind of had all sorts of different influences. And then, now what I read, it tends to be often, they're not necessarily crime novels, but they're always novels that have some sort of darkness at the heart of them.
Right. So you're reading these classic mystery thrillers. You're watching some horror movies at your friends' urging, even though you were a little scared and didn't really like them at first. Didn't you also, before you actually became a hit author, didn't you also work as a journalist you were in My
Yeah.
Racket? You worked for the Times in London. How do you think did that sort of stuff? Did you cover any crime stuff like that helped you, hone your skills in writing this genre?
No, I was a business journalist, so I didn't get to cover any exciting stuff. Well, that's a bit mean to business journalists, but it was kind of dry. I mean, I think there's lots about being a journalist that is great training for being a novelist, just in terms of how you write and how you edit, and the fact that I think one of the really good things is that you have to listen to the way people speak and to what they're telling you and what they're not telling you. You get to get those rhythms of people's speech. But I think actually my writing fiction was a real reaction against my journalistic life, which was quite dry and very like fact-based and very rooted in the day-to-day. And fiction was kind of an escape from that. So, there were certainly skills I took from journalism, but they weren't actually the stories themselves.
Gotcha. Well, either way, you ended up turning it into a successful writing career, but a lot of people might not remember, a lot of people probably became conscious of you with, The Girl on the Train, obviously. But before that, a lot of people forget you had a different writing alias, a pseudonym. You wrote like 4 romantic comedy novels. Remind us.
I did. I wrote 4 romantic comedies under a pseudonym, but not very many people read those. They came about in a kind of a strange way where I was commissioned to write the first one. So a publisher approached me and gave me sort of a character and an idea and asked me if I would write this novel really quickly, which I did. And I enjoyed doing it. But, romantic comedy was never really my game. I'm not that romantic, not that funny. It was never going to work out eventually. All the stories kept getting darker and darker, and more terrible things kept happening to the people in them. So it was very clear that wasn't the right genre for me.
Well, it was Amy Silver was your pen
That's
name
right, Amy
for
Silver.
the rom-coms. But then, then of course, Paula Hawkins burst out with her, that's your actual name, for the best-selling novel, The Girl on the Train. Talk about coming up with that. Were you riding on a train? I mean, so much of that had to do with that, was it alcoholic sort of main character, sort of the idea of the unreliable narrator. Are we, the audience, experiencing the correct stuff here, trying to piece it together of what might have gone in, a little bit of a Rear Window idea, thinking she sees something out of this train. But were you riding on a train? Is that how you came up with it?
Well, yeah, I did lots of commuting in and out of London, various bits of London in my working life. It's very much like the way people live here, that people tend to live on the outskirts and then commute into town, or they did pre-pandemic anyway. So it's a very recognizable thing. And this is also, when I was coming up with this idea, this was kind of pre-mobile phone, so they'd be reading their paper or they'd be staring out the window, and you pass all these houses. A lot of the train lines run really, really close to houses, so you can actually see into them, particularly when the trains stop at for problems on the line, which happens all the time as well. So it was those kind of, I was always thrilled by the idea that you might see something dramatic or exciting, which of course I never did, but it did give me that that was the germ of an idea there. Like, what would you do if you saw something terrifying or scandalous or what have you? And that was where kind of the idea for the concept of the girl on the train came.
Yeah, and I mentioned I drew the comparison to Hitchcock's Rear Window, but in this case, it was kind of cool how talk about how important and vital it was that it's on a moving train. So unlike Jimmy Stewart, who's stuck in his chair looking out of a fixed position, this is like you might see something that criminal to happen, but then the train's moving again, and then you have to wait and come back. So talk about how important that it's a moving item that takes you away from what you thought you saw, but also a cyclical item where that train's going to run that cycle again, so you will pass it again. But that sort of space in that transportation vehicle kind of works to your mystery advantage.
Yeah, because so the woman who's on the train, the girl on the train, Rachel, she takes this train journey every day. She sees these houses every single day. She feels like she knows these people. And as you get into the novel, you realize that Rachel is also kind of a special character. She's got a drink problem. She's kind of obsessive. She's obsessed with her ex-husband who lives in one of these houses that she passes. So she's got this rich fantasy life where she's imagining the lives of these people. And when she sees something, she believes that she has special knowledge. And this is all heightened by the fact that she's in a very bad emotional state, and she's also extremely unreliable because of her drink problem. So it's like a whole combination of things. So yeah, as you say, she's not Jimmy Stewart sitting in a chair who can't get out there. She probably foolishly goes and tries to insinuate herself into the whole mystery. And that's how she gets herself into trouble.
Exactly. Let that be a warning, folks. Don't get involved. Well, talk about how, I know we're short on time, but really quick, I would love your thoughts on the movie version. I mean, it was talk about how much that changed your life. First it's a best-selling novel. It's just this idea of a germ of a story you had that you thought would be cool. You write the story that you would love to read, and you did, and suddenly, boom, it's a hit novel, such that it becomes a movie. Talk about that really great performance by Emily Blunt, and just that whole must have been a whirlwind seeing your book made into a film.
Oh yeah, it was completely crazy, and I thought they did an amazing job with it. They stayed true to the heart, the sort of darkness at the heart of the story. Emily Blunt was fantastic as Rachel. Justin Theroux was a really brilliant and chilling Tom. So yeah, it was a crazy experience, but obviously a very good one.
And I don't want to spoil anything if for some reason however many years later people haven't read it or seen it, but how do I word this? How did you come up with the corkscrew wine thing? That's so twisted.
You'll have to. It's
twisted.
Yeah, it's literally twisted. Yeah, you'll have to read the book to find out about
that. Well, I want to know. Were you like in the kitchen with a wine bottle and you said, "Oh, this would be a great prop for a"?
I was thinking about you have to think about who Rachel is, the fact that she's got a drink problem, what she would know. What implement would she know, where to reach for it? She'd know exactly where the corkscrew was.
And I guess red or white wine. I guess you'd want red wine because that would help kind of cover up the blood maybe a little bit. Awesome. Well, you've been really generous with your time. I do want to actually throw out, in between Girl on the Train and A Slow Fire Burning, you also wrote Into the Water. How rewarding was it to write that? I'm sure after Girl on a Train, everybody wanted to see what you were going to do next. So was there pressure in that regard, or was it freeing where like, okay, I can pretty much write whatever I want now?
A bit of both, to be honest. There was a lot of pressure, and I was concerned about the fact that everybody would be waiting to see what I did next. But having had a big success, you also do feel slightly liberated that you do feel that you can, be ambitious if you want to, do something completely different if you want to. There is something, as I say, liberating about having had one big hit.
Awesome. Well, I believe, I could be wrong, but didn't Amblin pick that up for the movie rights? They're going to try to make a movie out of Into the Water, I believe.
No, well, they picked it up, but it's out of the option has expired now. So if anyone wants to, get in touch, it's available.
It's back out there if anyone wants to take it on. All right, cool. But first of all, let everyone check out your newest one, A Slow Fire Burning. I'm sure that'll become a movie one day too, because that's how you roll. So thanks so much for joining us. Anything in closing you want to say? Speak directly to our listeners. This is why you should pick up this new novel.
Oh, yeah. if you like a twisting, dark, occasionally funny revenge story, do read A Slow Fire Burning. I'm sure you're going to love it.
Awesome. Well, we'll let you get back to that wine corkscrew. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula Hawkins, author. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.